Yeah, I really felt called to share about what's going on as I see my feed get filled with women who I love. Amazing, amazing women sharing their Me Too stories, and it's amazing seeing the the numbers of how many of us. Hi, welcome if you're just coming on. The numbers of us that are saying Me Too, and I've just been circling, like, how did we get to this place where women became we became objects? Women became someone to be, um, something to be taken. We just became like up for grabs. How did we get here? Are we even questioning how we got here? It's and it's just, for me, I just keep coming back to organized religion, and it is informed by my upbringing, of course, growing up in an Islamic republic. But we're not even looking at the place of how did we get here? Did um how did we end up? I mean, there's all these men that are transgressing against women, but do you know, I know so many women who are not even calling out. I'm going to come back to organized religion. I know so many women who are not even calling out the people, that they're not even saying Me Too, because the person who did it was their father or their brother or someone that they love so much that they wouldn't even put them in this position because they believe it will bring shame to them. And we've bought into this shame. We've all bought into this shame for the perpetrator and for ourselves, which is why so many of the women who are speaking up now are saying the reason they didn't speak up was because they felt that it was their own fault. And of course, I have my own story. I have the family member who repeatedly molested me at the age of 5. I have the strange man who pulled up to my street and decided to stick his hands between my legs. Um, endless, stories in high school and in college, and even some situations that I put myself in. But my point is that when I see these women who I know are not sharing that they too have been through it, because I know it was a really close family member, someone that they loved, and I know that they're bought into this shame. And so I have to look at how did we get here? How did our men get here? And how did the women? I mean, women are perpetrators as well. So how did we get here? And it does go back to big religion and organized religion, because that's the beginning of, every religion, every organized religion has some sort of dogma around, around chastity and around sexuality, coming away from, obviously some of the Eastern religions like Hinduism and sects of that, like Tantra. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Islam. I'm talking about Christianity, um, Judaism, uh, the Orthodox Judaism. I have worked with so many like Mormons, recovering Catholics, and the structure of God, right? So if we take God to be purely masculine, take the feminine completely out of the divine, and then begin telling everyone, men, women, children, everyone, that their innate desires are wrong. So them desiring something, just simply desiring something outside of the norm heterosexual marriage is wrong. Guess what happens? It goes into the fucking shadow, and it will still express. It will still express. It will just express in the way of the shadow. I mean, can you even imagine if the structures that we look to for divine empowerment and divine connection are not? Um, can you even imagine if they're not telling you that you're wrong in your desires, that you're not wrong in your primal essence, in your lust, in your hunger for life, so that the desire that you have that doesn't fit into heteronorm marriage is not going to get tucked into the shadows. That's the first place. The oppression of big religion is the place to look if we want to undo this. And, it's like marriage. I mean, women, we have been property. We became property so long ago. And right now we have so many rights. And you know that I have women friends who are, pretty liberal, who said they would never take a man's name when they married him. And they all ended up taking his name. How did all these empowered women take his name? Why do you give up your name to take a man's name? Because there is a structure that is designed to have you be property, to have you be an object. And I have objectified myself, okay? I have objectified myself. I have, I have totally bought into it. I have danced in that. I have gone in it and I have come out of it. But there is a thing with what I really want to bring light to is organized religion and the heavy oppression around sexuality and sexual desire, which is designed to control, right? There's so much power in sexuality. There's so much freedom. There's so much aliveness. There's so much intelligence that can really create a civilization, like, not acted out, but there's so much intelligence there that can really create a world that thrives. And yet every major religion teaches it to be basically wrong outside of a heteronorm marriage. How else do you control people than to have them buy into that their source of power is wrong and evil? How do we do that? I mean, that's how you take people's power away. And you take people's power away, the expression doesn't go away. It just goes into the shadow and it becomes what we're seeing, right? It becomes the women that are filling up my news feed and your news feed, and the question that I want to ask is like of the men and the women who see this is, where is your allegiance? What do you align with? What thought form, what beliefs, what religious structures do you align with? And are these structures shaming sexuality? Are they shaming desire? Are they shaming the innate lust and hunger for life? And are they then by design having women be property, something to be grabbed, something to be owned, something to be possessed, something to be commoditized, which is the sex industry, human trafficking of mostly young girls? That's the commoditization of women. That comes from the desire that is disowned, and the only place it can express is in the shadow. And that comes from big religion. It doesn't come from anywhere else. I don't care how progressive you think you are. It's like you married your husband and you took his name. Why? Because it looks easier on the kid's last name? Because it's easier like when you take your kids to school? When did you become something that could just get handed from one family to another? And this is my question. I want to know the thought, the thinking around this from my sisters who did do this, who did give up your name when you got married, because this is just like, it's so subtle, but the programming is so embedded in how we live and how we think. It's like the fabric of our existence. And this is, when women become property, when we become something to be commoditized, when we become something to go from the father's family, the house, to the husband's house, then the divine feminine just has no place. There is no place. There's no reverence. There's no reverence for the divinity of the feminine. And, in the expression, the shadow expression of lust, sexuality, and desire, in the shadow expressions, the feminine is completely squelched. She doesn't have any place to be. So I just feel like these are really important conversations for us to have if we do really want to create a world, a civilization where we don't have this level of sexual assault and sexual trauma happening. We have to ask the questions about the structures that we align with. And major religion, big religion, is such a big part of that. I really hope that this sparks a conversation, because if anybody is watching this and you don't agree with what I'm saying, I would certainly love to know. I would certainly love to know what you're saying. And I also know that this world that we're all, at least so many of the people that are in my community that would end up seeing this, I know that we all want this world. I know that we all want a more loving, more harmonious world where there is permission for everyone. One of the things I learned when I was at Burning Man, I went to Burning Man for the first time this year, and what I learned, what I experienced was so profound, because there was so much freedom of expression. There was so much freedom around sexuality, like, just riding around and there's someone like offering to tie you up and hurt you while they pleasure you. So anything goes, right? Every form of orgy, every form of sexual expression was, had space to be. And something amazing happened in that space of permission for anything to go, where no sexual desire was shamed, where no one was being forced into a heteronorm marriage and being told your desires and your lusts are wrong. There was an innocence that was born. There's an innocence, and you could see people's actual essence, their true essence really coming through. And this is what I believe is possible for us if we can begin to unplug ourselves, not just ourselves individually, because I know the people that are watching this, but really using our voices for this, right? Coming away from the structures of organized religion, the oppression of sexuality is how we got here. Okay, that's the main thing of how we got here, because it will still express, it will just go into the shadow. And that's what's happened. And the relationship to female sexuality is to possess and commoditize. So possess is literally the man who just felt he could stick his hand between my thighs. He felt that he could do that. And that's exactly our relationship with this earth. So if we want to go where we want to go, we actually have to completely come away from the old structures. And it's really scary. But, I even want to extend an invitation to my sisters. If you consider yourself a liberal woman up for this change, that the collective change that we're up to, if you got married and you took your husband's name, change your name back. Stay married, but change your name back. Just do it. Just unplug from all of this unconscious, embedded in the fabric of our existence, that women are property, that we get to somehow be handed off, that we get to somehow be the property of man. That's it. I mean, that's really what I want to say. And if you didn't watch all of this and you just joined late, I hope that you watch all of it. I don't feel like there's no way out of this, but I do feel that it's going to take so many of us, maybe even all of us, to stand up against organized religion, against oppression, against the unconscious things that we have bought into, right? What's your last name, woman? Did you get married? Did you take your husband's last name? Why? Are you his property somehow? Do you even see how, it just really, really gets me, because sexuality, it's life force. It's going to find a way to express. So if you want to oppress it, it will express in the shadow. And the church, so many of the churches, pretty much all the churches and mosques and synagogues are really good places where I know sexuality is oppressed. So that's the first place to stand up and say, no, I won't change my last name when I get married. I won't, I'm not property. And really look at who are you aligned with and what do you believe? That's really all. I mean, there's so much more that I have to say about this, but it's really to come away from the possession and commoditization of female sexuality, where people think that this is something to be possessed or commoditized. We have to actually unplug ourselves, ladies. And that you don't get to go unconscious. You don't get to go unconscious anywhere. You don't get to go unconscious. You don't get to go unconscious in wanting to take your husband's last name. You don't get to go unconscious in not calling out your father who molested you because you love him. Right? But you'll call out the Weinstein and you'll call out the guy down the street, but you won't call out the guy who you love who molested you. Because we've collectively bought into this shame, right? We bought into the shame handed down from organized religion to oppress the sexuality. So then the sexuality found a way to be expressed, the shadow, that's where it's being expressed. But then we also bought into the shame for not calling it out, especially when it's somebody that we love. Fuck that. I mean, the whole thing has to be unearthed. And if we don't know that, it's like, look at Mother Earth. Look at her. She has been turning us upside down. It does not matter. Kali is coming through. What doesn't work has to be cleansed. The cleansing fire, the hurricanes and the floods and all of it. It's the same with us. We have to actually turn all of it inside out. All of it. All of it. All of it. All of it. That's all I'm saying. We cannot go unconscious around any of it. not calling out somebody that we love, not changing our last name. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, my sisters. You know where you have chosen to buy into that. You're not your full sovereign. You're not fully sovereign, and that there's any shame around any of it. How could you ever bring shame to someone if you love them and if they transgressed against you? Right? That's just buying into the shame. That's buying into the shame of the expression of the sexuality that went into the shadow as a result of the oppression of the big religion. Yeah. We call it out. We call it out. And then I think it's so important then to have compassion, because compassion is so key, at least for me. When I met the man who repeatedly abused me for 3 years, and he was 80 years old, and he's a family member who I haven't seen for many years, but he came about 7 years ago to apologize to me. And I got to know the life that he was living since it stopped, which had been about 25 years, because his wife knew, and his wife is the reason it stopped, but she stayed with him. And so for the 23 years that she stayed with him until they came to apologize to me, she never let him forget what she did. And so I had so much compassion when I learned that, it's like, yeah, we call it out and we have compassion because we're all in this together. Men, women, predators, victims. I don't actually buy into the victim consciousness. I do feel like this is a co-created world, and certainly I've been on the receiving end of the transgression, so I know the pain and the trauma and how long I had to work and go to therapy and work to really come out of it. So I know that, but I do feel that we're all in this together, and that we have a responsibility, each and every one of us, to question religion, to question government, every institution that is telling you that is basically not telling you that your sexuality is where your power is. Your power, your pure, pristine power to create life-affirming things, like that there's intelligence in your sexuality that is the source of your aliveness, that will create things that will perpetuate aliveness for the planet and for your life. So any organization that's not telling you that, the Christian church, the Islam, Judaism, all the sects of Christianity, right? Mormonism, all of them, all of the ones that are telling you that sex, that your desires are wrong. Your desires are wrong. His desires are wrong. Don't look at her. Don't look at him. Don't want that. Don't have that desire. Everyone who is telling you that is oppressing you, is wanting to squelch your power. That is your power. That is our power. And that's actually the intelligence that's in our sexuality. The life-affirming intelligence that's in it is what's going to create a planet that works for everyone once we bring it out of the shadow. Yes, but our power and our light, they're not separate. Our power, our light, our sexuality, they're not separate. That's the issue. The sexuality has been put into the corner. It has been called, like, as if, lust. Oh, what? I have a lust for life? I have a hunger for life? He has a hunger for life? He can't have that and still be a God, a divine, loving man, a man of God, a woman of God. And that's how we came away, where the divine feminine completely went away. Because if you make sexuality, and in the shadow expression, it says my connection's weak, so I'm probably going to have to hang up. But it says then in the shadow expression of sexuality, that's when the female, right, the softer aspect becomes something to possess and commoditize. And that's how we got here. That's how we got here. That's how we got here for what's happening on the newsfeed and Facebook, me too. And then so many are still silent. There's so many we still don't know. And that's how we got here with our earth. That's how we got here. The shame and self-hatred as a result of the oppression of sexuality is how we got here. So let's talk about it. I really welcome all of it. Yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Thank you.